Hey, what's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love Podcast. Back at it. It's been a while. I think the last episode was on my 30th birthday, but of course, want to start this episode off because it is, of course, Mother's Day. I want to give a shout out to all the amazing mothers in the world. Mainly the women in my life that are mothers, and most importantly, the most important woman in my life, my mom. So I want to give start off by giving a quick shout out to all the incredible mothers out there that are playing also the role of fathers as well, and also to all the dads out there playing the roles of moms. So definitely a shout out to everyone out there, on this Mother's Day, in whatever capacity that looks like, and to, of course, all those that have celebrating a heavenly Mother's Day as well. And I hope you all are able to cope with today as well. But I want to get right into this episode, and in terms of discussing with this episode, what does it look like being okay with doing nothing? And it's interesting in terms of sometimes we just don't sit there and do nothing and just exist at times. And I think it's important to remember that as often as we're kind of engaging with the world and in our daily lives, and so go so fast paced, that sometimes you got to sit back and sometimes be willing to accept to do nothing, and understanding that we can't always control every outcome. And I think this increase in the world today of needing to do something, or else you feel whether it's unaccomplished, whether it impacts your day to day, whether it's how people perceive you, and we'll throw titles of laziness or things like that. But I think it's sometimes it's necessary to kind of step back and be willing to do nothing. I think with doing nothing is just taking that time to exist in the moment. Whether that's 5 minutes of silence, 10 minutes, whatever that looks like for you, or however that nothing looks like for you. Um, and how are you choosing to revel in that moment? Because I think it's important that also you know, what does just existing look like for you as an individual? Like, what does just being you when you're not engaged in, whether it's your work, whether it's in your relationships, when it's just you all alone by yourself with your thoughts, what does just existing look like for you? Are you able to be alone with yourself and be with your thoughts, or do you feel like you have to be active and engaged with something? And as someone who I feel like I sometimes deal with, it's like ADHD. It can be sometimes tough to be willing to do nothing and just, kind of exist. Because I've always been an individual who's, being caught up in kind of that overthinking, overanalyzing, the world around me and the world around us. But also, my mind is just always kind of active. So when I take those moments to kind of do nothing and just exist, it really kind of opens my eyes to kind of what am I, kind of choosing to prioritize, which we'll get into kind of a little later into the episode. But it's important to kind of know what existing looks like for you, because if you don't know how you're just existing in the world, whether it's you just feel like you're floating on by and you feel like you're not really making an impact, or you feel like, hey, you're on top of the world, and you're a change maker, taste maker, whatever it may be. I think it's important to also remember to just exist as just a human being. I think that does really start with doing nothing. We live in this age of information where, things are so readily available, that it's hard to feel like doing nothing is okay. Or I feel like when you're doing nothing, it's wrong almost in a sense, because if you're not active or engaged with something, then you're not really making an impact or moving the needle in your life. But we also have to kind of remember that everything can't be, go, go, go. Um, that we can't always feel the need to have to do something. Um, and and I think sometimes when you do step back and do nothing, it's important to just remember, how are you existing, and what does existing look like for you. And for me, existing is just being content with myself at every moment and knowing that I'm exactly right where I need to be, even though sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes looking ahead to the future or stuck in the past. Uh, it's remembering that present moment to just breathe and knowing that, one, there's so much that is available for us to achieve. But then also knowing what it is that I have achieved, and being content with that. And something I've been thinking about of late, is the importance of kind of celebrating myself. As I think back to my trip in Turks, a couple weeks ago for my 30th, it was the realization of I don't really do the best job of celebrating myself, and I can, of course, admit that. But what does celebrating myself look like? And that's something, I'm, of course, figuring out as we go day by day, and really, tapping into those small victories that I've, kind of spoken on before, and highlighting the importance of that, being able to acknowledge those small victories, but then also being able to be willing to accept that, hey, maybe we're not the best at everything or at any, that's we're still learning ourselves in that sense. And like for me, it's always been a struggle to celebrate myself, in the sense of always kind of being humble. I'm not saying being humble is a bad thing, but I think it's also important to kind of, being willing to be braggadocious when necessary, not being braggadocious in the sense of putting others down or placating others, but really just being mindful of how are you truly uplifting yourself. Um, and then from that, how are you protecting your not only your self care time, but how are you protecting, you know, what that looks like for myself. And I'm doing, of course, doing better in that of protecting my self care time. As a person who, likes to go to a lot of events, sometimes it's necessary to being able to accept that, hey, it's okay not to go to this one event, or it's okay not to go to this thing. And I think it's, necessary in accepting when you're worn out. And even when I think of my Turkish trip, where I really didn't do all the excursions and do any of the real activities, because I think, one, I'll admit, I didn't really plan properly for the trip, of course, but also just knowing the endless possibilities that are possible. And I think it was just that sense of knowing, hey, it's possible. And if it's in God's plans, and if the timing presents itself to, of course, go back and, indulge in those adventures, in those, excursions, and those different activities that Turks, offers. Because I really just went into that trip initially just to kind of, unwind and relax, which I did feel like I accomplished, being able to, decompress at the beach and things of that nature. So really being willing to kind of protect when you know, don't have to do kind of what's expected, and trust in yourself and trust in that voice in you and what that looks like for you in terms of protecting yourself. And I think that's why it's important of late that I've been thinking about, as I'm up to on next. What what is what am I prioritizing versus how am I rewarding myself? And I kind of mentioned earlier I don't do the best of celebrating myself, and I think that in a sense can be I can admit something I don't really, because it you got to make it a priority to celebrate yourself. But it's just a matter of how am I rewarding myself, and I can admit that the things I prioritized maybe were the things that I was really trying to reward myself with. They weren't really my priorities. It was just the things I was trying to reward myself with. So I think it's important moving forward, not only for myself, but for all of you all out there to kind of understand what are you prioritizing, and then from those priorities, how are you properly rewarding yourself? I think sometimes we can mix up the rewards with the priorities because, as I said, we live in this instant gratification that we're just seeking the reward, where instead we're not prioritizing our own sanity, our own mental health, our own existence. And I think that's kind of the need for wanting or needing to do nothing or being accepting of doing nothing, because that allows the priorities to take place, and from there you can properly reward yourself. And then when we're properly rewarding ourselves, that's when we're truly really learning and discovering ourselves, because we were able to set those priorities, adhere to those priorities, um, and know, hey, we deserved this reward. And I think sometimes when we reward ourselves before we prioritize things in our lives, we kind of get that buyer's remorse of, did I really earn this? Did I really deserve this? So I think it's important moving forward to kind of really understand, hey, is this something I'm prioritizing, or is this something I'm just rewarding myself with? And saying, hey, I can come back and prioritize, this later on. But let's be honest, maybe that moment won't come to where you can prioritize that later on. So I think it's important to kind of know what are you choosing to prioritize. For me, of course, doing a better job of prioritizing, my relationships with family, with friends, and developing healthier relationships, prioritizing how my what is it my relationship with my body and kind of how that is developing, and then lastly, something I kind of always delve into, but my a few couple other things, many more things, but a few other things. um Prioritizing, my work ethic at work, and how am I properly, balancing that work-life balance, and ensuring that I'm taking care of myself and not, getting caught up in burnout, and overexerting myself, to where, hey, where sometimes you don't even, wanna, where the work no longer interests you. And I think that's definitely something where we obviously can't avoid all the time, but it's something I want to, as far as knowing my work ethic and knowing how hard I work and knowing that it's probably, being rewarded, of course, as well. Uh, I think that's the thing about priorities versus rewards too, is that sometimes we expect others to reward us for the things that we're not prioritizing in our lives. And that's just not going to happen, until you properly prioritize the things that matter to you. The rewards will be meaningless because you won't feel like you really deserve that reward. So I think it's going to be necessary, especially for myself, moving forward, in terms of understanding Am I properly prioritizing this, or am I, only trying to reward myself for the time being? But then also after, but also knowing, hey, I had prioritized this, and now, yes, I'm deserving of this reward. So it's gonna be instrumental, moving forward, not only for myself, but for anyone to understand that difference. Sometimes we don't get the difference because we feel like, hey, I deserve this because I at least did this. So I think it's gonna be interesting moving forward to how that continues to evolve, because that kind of ties into not only to protecting yourself for your time, but how am I choosing to exist? That's part of the existence of it all. Um, and knowing yourself and knowing, hey, am I properly doing the things that are meaningful and impactful for me, or am I just doing things to serve my ego, serve my pride, or just because I feel like, hey, I'm deserving of it? But of course, we're deserving of things, but I think it's important to know, because you almost know within yourself, that voice, that inner voice, that intuition, and the sense of knowing, when you deserve that thing. So, something I did learn as I transition is the Lakers, did not deserve the, obviously clearly advance in the playoffs, as they did not. Losing 4-1 in a gentleman's sweep to the Denver Nuggets. Is going to be an interesting off season for my Lakers, as Bron, player option. D'Lo also has a player option, which I'm pretty sure both of them will opt out, and we'll see what LeBron ends up doing. We, of course, fired our entire coaching staff, um, and cleaned house there. So Darvin Ham is no longer the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. So it's going to be interesting moving forward how who are we going to end up hiring? Rumors, of course, of JJ Redick. It's going to be interesting, of course, with his relationship with LeBron and the podcast. And then, hey, if we do hire JJ, who's going to be his assistant coaches? Are you bringing more experience? Are you bringing in his buddies in a sense too? So it's going to be interesting, for my Lakers moving forward. But continuing on, obviously the playoffs doesn't end, just because the Lakers lost, sadly. But obviously Denver advanced. They're currently down 2-1 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, led by that man, future face of the NBA, future face of the league, Ant Edwards, and future Laker, Anthony Edwards. Um, but yeah, he's been cooking. Um, Currently, the Knicks and Pacers are currently going on as during the time of this recording, where the Pacers are blowing the Knicks out. I think last I saw it was a 28-point lead at halftime, 60-41, or 29-point lead. I can't remember, but it was basically Pacers blowing them out. Knicks, of course, up 2-1 in that series. Looking look, this is looking like Indiana's going to tie this series. As we head back 2-2 to the Garden. It's been an incredible series, reminiscent of the 90s matchup between the Knicks and Pacers, 90s and early 2000s. Really 90s, not really early 2000s, but mid 90s matchups between Knicks Pacers. Reggie and Pat Ewing and John Starks and Mark Jackson, and all the incredible battles uh, that that was back then. It's almost deja vu in a sense, because outside of this game today, they've been close down to the final buzzer and all the three other previous games. So it's been an incredible series to watch. My prediction is I think Indiana's gonna pull this out only because the Knicks lack enough bodies. I think it's gonna start to wear on the Knicks as far as the minutes the endless minutes put on guys like Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Hartenstein, Brunson. So I do think the Pacers are going to pull it out. Obviously, they're going to have to steal a game in the Garden, uh, game 5. So it's going to be interesting. Then next, as the playoffs continue in the East, or no, what? In the West, we also have OKC Dallas. Dallas 2-1 beat OKC yesterday. That's an incredible series of two young stars, but I think Luka and Kyrie are, but Shea is so good, man. It's tough, but I do think Dallas is gonna pull that series out. Where they obviously, yeah, I just think Kyrie and Luka are just too good, and they're good enough closers to where, as you know, their experience is gonna weigh heavily moving forward in the series. But OKC's young. I think they got another top 14 pick today. I think they got the 12th pick in the lottery earlier today. So OKC's going to be here, moving forward. They're not going nowhere. But I do see Dallas moving on to the Western Conference Finals. I think we get so tough with Denver and how they've been playing, Minnesota. But I do think Denver still somehow pulls it off, and we get a Denver Dallas Western Conference Finals. Then in the East, Boston has been pretty much cooking the Cavs. Of course, the Cavs beating the Magic to advance. Where Paolo was cooking, had to go 7. Incredible game 7. The Magic just ran out of gas, of course. But yeah, Cleveland. I think Garland's just got to step up for Cleveland. If Garland can step up for them, they'll be fine. But I'm expecting a Pacers, Celtics, Eastern Conference Finals, and Nuggets, Mavs, Western Conference Finals. And as far as my finals predictions, I'll hold off on that just yet. But then moving on, next I want to dive into the NFL draft. The NFL draft was interesting, and I still don't know what my Falcons are doing. Drafted Michael Penix Jr. The shocking move of the draft. Of course, the Falcons are gonna make the shocking move of the draft. Not surprising at all for me as a fan, but getting Penix at 8 after paying Kirk Cousins this past offseason on a 4-year, $180 million deal, which really technically, if you look at the cap numbers, and the cap hits moving forward, it's really a 2-year contract where we can kind of we'll probably take not as big of a cap hit in, I want to say, year 3. So it's really kind of a 2-3 year contract, but it's interesting not taking a impact player and instead kind of this bridge of the present and looking towards the future at the same time, because of kind of what happened to close out the Matt Ryan era in Atlanta, where we didn't have formidable, whether yeah, formidable quarterback moving forward to kind of take the reins, kind of that turnstile of Mariota, Heineke, Ritter. So I get it. It's just interesting. I do like the improvements on the D line. Obviously went D line heavy because of the lack of picking an edge rusher early with the 8th pick, where people expected, like I thought we were gonna either get Latu uh or Nailu Latu or Dallas Turner out of Bama. So obviously we didn't get either. I like the Ruru Orokoro pickup, Braylon Trice. I like him. And Brandon Dorless. I like him as well. And I think a lot of people are talking about Zion Lego, but I think he's going to be a nice pickup too. We obviously didn't, you know, really any of the other major needs that we had, such as cornerback and getting a cornerback too. The KC Washington pick at receiver. I don't know if that really solves our receiver woes. But obviously another receiver to throw into the mix there. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting how my Falcons look this season. Of course, the NFL schedule releases in Thursday on the 15th, so that's gonna be fun to see how the schedule plays out. Figure out, of course, kind of what games I want to go to. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Caleb Williams, of course, going number one in the draft by the Bears, as everybody expected. I think the Bears did an incredible job in their draft, not only with their offseason, but adding Rome as another weapon with Keenan Allen to give Caleb additional weapons. And I think the biggest winner is Patrick Mahomes getting another weapon, another speed guy, Xavier Worthy, going to the Chiefs. I knew it was going to happen. I'm pissed it happened, but he is. Hopefully he cooks. I think they also get back Justin Ross. Obviously dealing with issues with Rasheen Rice. So it's gonna be interesting with the Chiefs moving forward. And the star of the draft, Keon Coleman for the Bills. He is a personality, he's a brand, and he's going to go far in this league and just being himself. Hopefully, his skill matches his, of course, personality. But yeah, he'll be fine. He's an incredible receiver. I think Josh Allen having another weapon now that Stephon Diggs is in Houston with CJ Stroud. So replacing that obviously is going to be tough replacing Stephon, but I think Keon Coleman will be a star and he'll be just fine. So that was pretty much draft recap. And then now, kind of want to obviously get into top four. I want to start off by shouting out, starting with my favorite album. It's Dusk Falls Before Dawn by my boy Sharon. Dropping, that solid EP. One on One is a banger. What is it? Step Through solid. Say, can't remember all the. Obviously, it's only 4 tracks, but I just can't remember the track list off the top of my head at the moment. But yeah, One on One, love it. Yeah, they love it. Hey, but solid EP from him. Shout out to him, dropping another solid project. Then of course we'll move on to the outside of music. The diss heard around the world. The diss is heard around the world. Obviously, as you all know, the Drake Kendrick beef that's been going on. I think it obviously is pretty much over. Where Kendrick bodied them after Not Like Us. I do think the Heart Part 6 was decent, but it did kind of give that, white flag kind of feel. And obviously the battle's over as of now. But I commend Drake for, despite the salacious words thrown at him, whether true or untrue, because, hasn't been proven, of course. He put up a phenomenal fight. I think Taylor Made Freestyle was solid. Family Matters was solid. And then I think he just, the Hard Part 6 was what kind of, if he would have came with more energy with that fire beat, because the beat was so fire, but he just didn't come with the energy. It was just so dejected, so defeated almost in a sense in his voice. And I'll give it to him. He just, I think he ended his tour the month before. Obviously he's the one that, encouraged and invited the beef. But yeah, Kendrick pretty much won using Drake's style. Euphoria killed him. 616 in LA was pretty solid. It was a good track. Meet the Graham, so dark. I don't think that's never gonna have replay value for most people, but that song, oh my gosh, that was just pure. I don't know where that came from, but it was just that's right after Drake had dropped Family Matters too. I want to say it might have been like what 15, 30 minutes after he dropped Family Matters. Push Ups by Drake, another Drake banger. I think if we're comparing this battle in terms of the songs, both artists, hit hard. They were heavy hitters. I think even Taylor Made Freestyle was solid. Push Ups, of course. But I think once Kendrick hit that DJ Mustard beat, he had the hook. He had the ad libs. He had the refrain. It was just a complete the club banger. I mean, that was just what edited, and I mean, you can't really offer pedo you know pedo claims on you. It's kind of hard to kind of come back. So yeah, that was it was just crazy. So definitely Kendrick won the battle, but Kendrick won the war. Drake put up a nice battle. Oh, Kendrick won the battle. I think the war is not over, and Drake put up a good fight. But I definitely do not think this war is over. Um, it's gonna be interesting. What I think because it's been reported. Obviously, Kendrick got an album coming out soon. I think Drake's probably gonna now get in his bag and drop something soon. And of course, my dog Cole. Even though the way people interpreted Cole and how he after 7 minute drill and bowing out afterwards, I think Cole's gonna come back a major way. So that's gonna be interesting too to see that perspective as a Cole fan. But it's been funny too seeing the stand-up from both sides, man, of Drake and Kendrick. Yeah, stand-up is insane, man. And that's me speaking as a Laker fan. And I feel like us as Laker fans sometimes are insane with our stand-up, which we are. But yeah, it's been crazy, man. But yeah, that beef, insane. Kendrick definitely won. Um, then now, favorite show I'm currently watching. I've been watching a lot of my kind of like feel good kind of favorite, my comfort shows. BMF finishing this current season of BMF. Uh, The Shy's back. And been watching 911. Been getting back into the Circle. I ain't watched the Circle in a minute, so I've been getting back into the Circle. Um, that's my only reality show that I really watch. So I've been getting back to the Circle. Of course, NBA playoffs. Really haven't been on the podcast wave of late. Really just been on my comfort shows. Um, what do I currently have it going on? Kind of really just work wise or with everything, getting acclimated to this new role at work. And then just continue, grow and see, what adventures, come out of it moving forward. Figuring out these priorities versus rewards. Something I gotta, of course, do my own homework on within myself. And then what do I have next? Just always, trying to figure out, how can I get better? How can I be better? How can I, you know, get more in tune with the healthier version of me and what that looks like as I continue, grow and evolve, as I always say. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Of course, figuring out getting back in the gym and what that looks like. If y'all have any suggestions for any gyms in Charlotte or anywhere, gonna look into a gym membership. So if y'all have any suggestions, definitely send that my way. Or gym recommendations, definitely send that my way because I got to get back on it or really get on it. Not even get back on it because I ain't really been on it. But yeah, so yeah. But I mean, that's pretty much it. Appreciate you all always for listening to, me. Sometimes I feel like I was say, it feels like I'm just rambling. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for always listening. Hope, as I said to start off the show, you all have an amazing Mother's Day if you are a mother. If you're celebrating someone in your life who's a mother, I hope you love and appreciate them. Um, and then, as always, peace, love, and blessings. And, until next time, yeah, peace.